That joke isn't funny anymore. Available on Amazon and everywhere. Welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. I'm your host, Lou Perez, and I am joined by educator, influencer, and buddy, Will Reusch. Hey, Will.
Yeah. What's going on, Lou? This is fun. I love talking to you.
Yeah, well, Will, we've known each other like for a few years now, and we've never met in person that I can remember. But we've been we communicate over Instagram. I think has been our main form of communication, our main hub. And you've been doing really well on Instagram. Do you find that of all the platforms, John, is that sort of like the main your main focus where you're doing the most work?
Yeah, that's the only one that I really water. Like everything else just like automatically goes over or something like that. You know, I'll post on Twitter, like, I don't know, not even once a month, you know? So yeah, it's just grass is greener where you water it. So I just used Instagram because that's why I started. You know, I was testing these ideas of like, you know, questioning things on social media. I just picked that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I find, I think a lot of the goals, or one goal for like an adult is to be able to have conversations with people with whom you disagree. And I think that's, you know, very noble. And it's something where I like to think like, yeah, I'm one of those people. But I think what I often find is that I find myself, I do put myself in a bubble where if I were to track, say like the last week of my like social media use or, you know, conversations with people, I'm like, oh, I'm basically talking to people who think like I think, or think like I think on these different topics. But I think you're the real deal in that you are always willing to talk to people with whom you disagree. And I think some of those conversations are really impactful. It's like, oh, cool. Here are people coming together. And then other conversations, I don't know how you deal with it because you're, I don't know, but without like a specific example. There's like one example in particular where you were asking questions about, well, what is, you know, white privilege? Like, how would I, you know, how would you define it? How would I know if I am a beneficiary and all that? And your interlocutors basically want to know part. They basically want you to shut up. And it was like, but it's a conversation you're having. So at some point, Will, you're going to have to speak and you're going to, you know, ask questions. So I don't know how you do it. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm actually curious. Like if someone has these bonkers ideas, you're like, what is it that I'm missing? You know, like there has to be something to this, especially when you take like a really like controversial idea, like the big ones, you know, whether it's like abortion, immigration, guns, whatever it is. Like the country's 50-50 split ish. So you can't just merely say that they're all terrible or they're all idiots or they're all ignorant. Like it can't be that simple. There has to be something there. You know, Trump, like people are so triggered by Trump one way or the other. The, you know, Trump derangement syndrome or Trump, like, you know, whatever, loyalty syndrome. And it's like, so what is it? So it gets me really curious, you know, and even if they do have wild ideas, like you might be referring to the one where I had the conversation with like critical race theory teachers. At the very least, I just like through my Socratic method of asking questions, they get revealed to what their ideas really are. And that's why I like having it publicly. You know, I don't have those kinds of conversations as much privately. Like I will if it comes up, and not. I think there's an educational value, and that's kind of my background.
Yeah, and I think the curiosity is really important because I'm happy that there are people who I can reach out to if I really don't know about a subject, where I could say like, hey, what should I be reading? You know, to learn more about it, and not having to. I hate like sometimes just like going into a conversation like ready to. Like debate it, you know, it's like, oh, it's and like, I'm reading a book right now. Let me just unplug for headphones back in. So last year I debated Michael Ian Black, a comedian, about is wokeness killing comedy? And going into the debate, everybody who I talked to, because I was asking people like, oh, you know, what are some things some topics I should bring up and et cetera. they all wanted me to murder this guy. They all, like destroy him, Lou, destroy him. And I was going into the debate like kind of worried because I'm like, here are all these people who want me to, kind of knock this guy out, figuratively. And it's like, man, what if I don't deliver? And fortunately, I had my wife and my friend Greg, who were telling me like, no, just go into it. It's a show. Like, you're going to entertain. You're going to have a good time. Like, have a genuine, good time and a good discussion. And that's what we ended up doing. And it came out great. Like, I really enjoyed my time with him talking. And there were points that he made that I think are, valid. Back an hour back and forth. I think, a lot of good came out of it. And now I'm reading his book. It's called A Better Man, a mostly serious letter to my son. And I'm almost done. And I can't tell you the last time I read like a book. Yeah. So this is, I'm going into it where there's a lot of things that I, disagree with, but I'm reading it. And I'm not trying to like basically dissect it as if I have to go back and forth with him arguing, because I would love to talk about the book someday with him, because he has a really interesting biographical story, and he's the father of a son, and I have 2 sons. So I think there's a lot that can be gained by, going into things with more of a curiosity and open mind than just going in as if, okay, now I'm going to be fighting this guy on this topic. Cause I think it could be exhausting and I don't know, just a lot of good could be missed, I think.
Yeah, well, you're in comedy, so part of it is like roasts do well, and it's when you really slam somebody in a funny way that does well. But I think you can ask questions too to reveal, kind of ignorance and stuff like that too. I think you can, and you're a talented guy. Like, you can turn a question into the joke as opposed to a statement into the joke, so you can still keep it entertaining. But yeah, the divisions and stuff like that are so big right now, and social media caters to what you want, not necessarily what you need. So, which was great back when social media, like early days of Facebook, when it's like, I like model airplanes, so it sends you a lot of model airplane stuff, right. And it's great. But now that it's like your worldview, and you only get like, then we're in completely different worlds. We get completely different news. We get completely different, narratives about what happened. If there's a school shooting, they talk about, one outlet talks about how the AR-15 killed a bunch of people, and then when the shooter was killed by an AR-15 and an NRA, safety officer or something like that, then that's only revealed in the more conservative news. And it's like, both are true. And if we're trying to figure out the world, like, I think being as informed as possible is the best bet.
Yeah. And I think the idea of being able to steel man arguments is really important, because there are often so many times, and I see it in, say, like entertainment, where a character will be like a conservative or the occasional libertarian character. And I'm like, oh, these people don't know any conservatives or libertarians.
Oh, yeah.
And it comes across as just like these caricatures. So being able to say like, okay, I get, this is what you believe. This is what we're, this is what you're putting out there. Like, before we started recording, we mentioned, so the Democratic vice president nominee is Tim Walz, right? Is it Walz or Walz?
Well, I think it's W-A-L-Z.
Yeah. And I've been seeing a meme going around about him and tampons, right?
Tampons, him.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what it's about, but apparently in Minnesota, is it Minnesota?
Yeah.
Minneapolis. Okay, Minnesota. He's putting, he signed legislation that they put tampons in like the boys' bathroom, right? And I don't know anything beyond that. Right. And me, in my brain, that seems kind of silly for a number of reasons, beyond not even biology involved, but I just know how little boys are when it comes to, that sort of thing, where I can imagine they're going to have to be refilling that a lot, not because the boys are using it for, sanitary reasons, but because the boys are fucking around with the tampons that are in there, in the bathroom. But yeah, did you do a deep dive into this?
No, I just started this morning. So like apparently did sign something like the trans refugee bill or refuge bill in April of 2023, and had a bunch of things about like, people who are escaping, abusive households and things like that. And then the language was something like 10% of high school kids miss school because of access to like tampons and sanitary napkins and stuff like that. So they must be provided for all menstruating persons, for free or something along those lines. And the language menstruating person is what I think conservatives are jumping on, is this concept of like, that would mean that if someone is a trans man, which I was talking to some people, they don't know what like a trans man or a trans woman is. Trans man means that you're biologically female and then you transition to male, and provide for them as well if they are. But the language says from 4th to 12th grade, which I guess there's some kids that might be like, I don't know, early to puberty.
Precocious puberty, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, and then they would have to be early to puberty and transitioning in 4th grade, which is, I suppose, could happen. But, it triggers a lot of people because of all the stuff around gender affirming care. I had, conversation with like Chloe Cole, who went through a really tough detransition story. The stuff that's happening in Europe, they're kind of pulling away from all this gender affirming care stuff. But it's still very much alive here, transitioning children through puberty blockers and hormones, and then even surgeries, before they're 18, before, when they're 14, 15 years old. Yeah. And that's obviously really controversial.
Yeah. You mentioned a stat, like 10% of kids missing school.
That's what was mentioned in the bill. Yeah.
I mean, and I'll take that, as true. I mean, if you think, just thinking about that, it's like, well, that's really sad. Just beyond without like any of the trans issues and stuff like that, the idea that, there are kids out there who are, staying home because they don't have these, they're not having their needs met with, when it comes to, tampons or pads and all that. And it's like, I might be more interested in talking about that, that might be more interesting.
Yeah.
And like with Tim Walz, I know a big thing that's come out is this meme about, him giving like universal lunch to kids, which, it's kind of the list of things that it's hard to find fault with. I mean, that's probably well down at the, at the bottom of the list. But as a parent, and you're a parent too, my question is, well, what's up with the parents that they're unable to feed their kids? Like, I feel like, again, like it's sort of like, that's a really important aspect of it that is being, just nobody's talking about it because the free school lunch is being used as a talking point,
Yeah. I've taught in, for 17 years in very diverse communities, wealthy private schools like near Beverly Hills, and then like the hood in East LA. And there's a whole bunch of reasons, I've talked to a lot of parents who are struggling, and like some of them are just working whatever jobs they can get. They're uneducated. They might be immigrants and trying to get what they can get. I mean, I'm in LA, so, rent's really expensive and cost of living is really expensive. So it could be that. And then there's other parents that are just really negligent, so it's all over the place, but it's never the kid's fault.
Right.
When it's, even if it's a 16-year-old, it's not their fault that they don't have access to food, and I taught a bunch of kids who the only food they got was the food through the school. It's really heartbreaking, and then you get into like stuff, like if you want to get like really like political, is like, how are we able to send so much money to foreign nations and stuff like that, and pay for all this like crazy exorbitant things for our government and our government officials and all kinds of stuff like that. But then these kids in East LA can't get the basics. It's kind of like all the money that was sent to Ukraine, but people in Maui never got anything for their houses. Like the way that wealth and money is kind of pushed around by our government should be more of a focus than whether or not Kamala is black, or whether or not, Tim Walz is giving tampons to kids, or, whether or not JD Vance, was it supposed to do? He like humps couches or something like that.
Yeah.
So like whatever it is, like this is all just nonsense when there's like real things going on for people. You know, I was at the RNC. I got invited to the Republican National Convention. I was like, never been to something like that. And it was like all expenses paid. So I was like, yeah, why not? Let's go talk to people. What you mentioned about like, oh, these people don't know any like libertarians or something. That was the case. Cause I talked to a lot of like Trump supporters, MAGA hat wearers who had like 2 or 3 PhDs or like started $1 million business from nothing when they were homeless. Like there's a lot of really brilliant Trump supporters, which, you know, doesn't get shown a lot. But the working class is struggling right now. Small business owners. My wife works with does marketing for small business owners. She's never seen it like this. Like how many small business owners are just struggling. And the people who are like, hey, I'm struggling. I don't care about tampons. I don't care about whether Kamala's black. I don't care about couches. I'm struggling. What are you going to do for me? Those are the people that you need to win over, I think. And that's just not nearly enough of the conversation from both sides.
Yeah. With the, you know, talking about like the kids in the school lunches. So a couple of things, like one, so
I went off on that.
No. It's good. No, I'd love to talk to you more about the RNC for sure. So my oldest is 4. The other guy, that's what I call him. He's going to turn 3. And we have a problem getting them to eat. Like we are not, you know, we have more than enough food. And these guys, you know, I don't know what the next, I don't know how they grow, because it's like, what are these dudes eating? Like they're just not eating, you know? So that's like our burden that we have. Yeah. And, you know, I went to public school all the way through 8th grade. And I remember the food sucking, like not just sucking because it was like bland and all that, but just like, I wouldn't feed this shit to a dog. So it's been a while since I've been in schools. So, you know, at least my hope is that the kids that are getting, you know, lunches are getting good stuff, you know, but then like one of the problems I've heard with that is that like, you know, if they're feeding kids like, you know, rice dishes and salads and hummus and all that, well, they're throwing that out because they want burgers and hot dogs and they want the junk food.
Yeah. I mean, there's still like Gen Z or Zoomers or whatever. I guess that would be like who's like the grade, you know, in school right now. Like they do have everything they want at their fingertips. I mean, that's the weird thing is you can be impoverished and still have Netflix. You know, you can be, you know, in a really tough situation and like, you know, not have access to tampons and stuff, but you still have a smartphone. And so it's like there's a weird priority thing here. It's almost like Brave New World a little bit. Like we're just so distracted, you know, the Aldous Huxley book where it's like, you know, we're just so distracted with like entertainment, you know, and like and just like the instant gratification, the dopamine hits of posting on social media, which John Haidt talks about a lot about the dangers of that, and like the data is out there. And then also drugs, you know, like the access to all kinds of like, you know, designer drugs and stuff like that. That's still really big with kids. And I think that the priorities go to that stuff because it's like, it's easy. It's right at your fingertips. And then the important stuff is being missed. And that's probably happened with adults too. Like how many adults, you know, could pick up a side job, you know, selling Amway or something like that, but instead they're watching Masked Singer every night, or they're just scrolling for endless hours on Instagram.
I'll tell you what, during COVID, during the lockdowns, Masked Singer, that was the go-to, man.
Oh no.
And I was trying to figure out, like I was, I think at one point with my book, I was, you know, putting together like chapters and subjects and stuff. And I'm like, is there something about the Masked Singer? Because I thought I remember taking a screenshot of the Masked Singer. It was a guy in a banana suit. It was like a cartoonish banana looking thing. Yeah. And they were singing like some love song. And I was like, this is just so emblematic. This says so much about the times that we're living in. I don't know what it said exactly, but I felt like it captured a moment. I think he ended up being Shawn Michaels from Poison. He ended up being the banana guy. So.
Is that the guy? Brett Michaels. Shawn Michaels.
Sorry. Wasn't Shawn again?
I was like, Shawn Michaels guy. He's a celebrity. Good for him.
Thank you for correcting that in real time. Because I'll tell you what, all my Poison fans They would get
they're gonna come after
They
you.
would just come after me right in the comments.
Yeah, I really love your book. It's amazing. I've recommended it to so many people. But I was thinking, you know what I was thinking about? The Masked Singer, because my wife and my mother-in-law were watching it, and then my kids got into it. Like I was like, oh, I can't do this. But they were like, when it would reveal, I was thinking, wouldn't it be funny if one of them was the DJ Marshmallow? So he takes off the mask of like the banana, and it's back to like his like mask that he just wears all the time. No one knows his identity.
Oh, is that like one of the like Daft Punk kind of guys?
Yeah, there's someone like that. Like they pull it off, and it's just like the Daft Punk. It's like,
yeah,
you gotta keep going. Like that doesn't tell us anything. You know what I mean? Yeah. I thought that would be funny.
Yeah. Wasn't Sarah Palin was one of the I think Sarah Palin and I think Giuliani was one as well.
Yeah. Well, there's some value in like fame where there wasn't always. You know, people were famous and not wealthy, but now like influence, having a lot of, you know, whatever followers and stuff like that, there's value in it. You know, you can turn it into something.
I hope you didn't take offense to me calling you an influencer.
Kind of like, I mean, not from you, like not offense, but it does make me feel gross because it's like influence to do what? I mean, unless I'm trying to influence you to, you know, talk to people you disagree with and be a critical thinker and all the stuff I do in my classroom, I guess to some degree, trying to influence you to, you know, go out, exercise, do hard things, do ice baths and stuff like that, you know, get curious about the world, not be so judgmental about people that think differently than you, then sure, then I'll take that. But I do feel weird because it's part of that, because that's the number one job that Gen Z, you know, the grade that I teach, like wants to be. They want to be influencers. It's like that feels like a lot of responsibility that I know what you should do. I want to influence you and on what you're going to do with your life and the way you should be and stuff like that. I'm very careful about that. I think it's just you go with the cliches of like seeking truth and wisdom and pausing on judgment, showing grace. I try to go to like whatever biblical truths or like philosophical truths and stoic truths and stuff like that. Because who am I to influence anybody to do anything, you know?
Yeah. Well, I find it funny that a lot of influencers are basically just influencing people to look at them. That's what it seems like. And you know, it might be, hey, you know, I'm a dirty old man, and Instagram, I guess, knows that I like a nice looking butt. And they throw these butts at me, you know, in the you know, they're recommending me look at these butts, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, I didn't pay to look at this, this person. How are they making a living? How's this poor person with a great ass making a living?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of OnlyFans, man.
It must be. Yeah,
I think so. I think it's a lot like that, or you just give away a ton for free, and then you have some sort of like. I think for like the girls, I think it's OnlyFans, or it's like maybe, you know, so a lot of people have like Patreons and stuff like that. I mean, I think there's people that want to support people that do certain things that bring value. But then when you have a lot and you do like you do like funny videos and stuff like that, if you falling over or whatever it is, then it becomes you get paid to like show up to things. Show up to clubs and stuff like that. It can be paid really well. And then you get paid for, you know, like product placements and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. I mean, I built this Instagram following. It's not huge, but it's significant in that like people are really, they seem to get some value from my Instagram platform. Like, you know, like really some really smart people and again, I guess like influential people, you know, whatever, like, dude, they see value in what I'm doing as like an educator. So I was like, what do I do with this? I've been pouring a lot of like my thoughts and ideas and taking the stuff I was doing in the classroom, putting on, what do I do with it? And that's why, you know, the thing that I was telling you about, like I broke off and did my own education business, because it's like, you know, school teacher, there is a glass ceiling to how much money you can make as a classroom teacher. And there's also a glass ceiling as far as how many people you can reach, you can influence. You know, as a classroom teacher, there's only so many kids in your classroom. So the idea, a lot of people are going to online school. So the idea of taking what I do in the classroom, what I do on Instagram, that seems to resonate with people. They really like my approach to education. I've been teaching for 17 years, and these kids have like, you know, still reach out to me about like the impact I've had on them. How do you scale that to, instead of teaching 70 kids a year, teaching 700 or more? You know, that's so I just parlayed the Instagram or the social media into, you know, people who might be interested in my stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Cause I have, my wife and I have friends. There are a couple who are starting their own school, like, brick and mortar, their own school.
Yeah.
And they're doing it through, Acton, I believe it's,
Acton Academy. Yeah.
Acton Academy. Yeah. So the Acton Academy, it helps them have, a little bit, more structure. They have an idea on, okay, this is how it's done now. How are you going about it?
Yeah. Is it in New York that they're building it?
New Jersey.
Okay. Yeah. So I thought about that. There's the Apogee schools, Matt Boudreau and Tim Kennedy. So I thought about that. I read up. I forget the book now.
Tim Kennedy, the MMA fighter.
Yeah.
Really? Oh wow!
Yeah.
I didn't know he had a.
He started a school with a guy named Matt Boudreau, who they're called the Apogee schools. It's kind of modeled a little bit after the Acton schools. So I thought about that, like building my own brick and mortar school. But there's something to it that, like, what I'm good at is explaining complicated things in a simple way to teenagers. Like I just leaned into what am I really good at. And it's not necessarily running a brick and mortar school with like codes and then hiring and budgets and stuff like that. It's just teaching. So how do I teach as many people as possible? And so my platform is all online. It's a supplemental online platform. This year it's going to be U.S. history. It's going to be civics. It's recorded classes and live classes for people who homeschool or they just, regular school and want to just supplement because they want to bring critical thinking into the classroom. I don't know what percentage of teachers are really excellent, but it's not a lot. A lot of teachers are not very good. Some are great. Absolutely. But a lot of them are terrible. So people are pulling their kids out of school for tampons in the bathroom or whatever reason it is. And where are they putting them? They're putting them in these kind of cookie cutter homeschool platforms that are just like clicking through. The kids can just chat GPT their answers and stuff like that. And what I'm built is we meet together as a classroom online that can scale bigger. And, I answer questions, but then I go over, important things about history, the big lessons from history, the big lessons about our government and our society and the way it works and stuff like that. So just started, onboarding people a few weeks ago, a couple of families, and it's been really, really cool. I mean, I do get the feeling of teaching. It's just now I teach outside of just the one small community I was teaching in, last year, and now it can branch out, and parents from all over the country who want their kid to be able to think through all the stuff happening in the world can be in my class.
That's great. What's it called? What's the program called? It's
called Patterdox, Patterdox. So the name, I wasn't sure what to call it because it's like, Jordan Peterson just did like Peterson Academy or whatever it is. And like, I don't know. So I did Patterdox. The idea is dox being belief and pattern being you understand the world through recognizing meta patterns in everything. So, when people were like, why are you questioning us going into the Ukraine or supporting Ukraine? It's like, well, we went into Iraq for weapons of mass destruction. We got into Vietnam for the Gulf of Tonkin incident. And we got into the Spanish-American War for the attack on the USS Maine. None of those things happened. So I see the pattern of how we get into these wars, and I'm going to question it. I think that you understand a lot about the present when you study the past and you recognize patterns. So it's just the idea of like, not about the nitty gritty. It's not about who flanked who in the Battle of Saratoga. It's about why we get into conflict and how we resolve conflict. It's like the big picture stuff that you end up pulling from school anyway. You don't remember the details. You remember the big picture stuff when that's explained to you. So I'm like the big picture guy. So that's what the whole platform is kind of based on.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of supplemental education for sure, especially if you have people who are, going to, in government schools now, because there's just the reality of how much information can you actually cram into a 45-minute class, a few days a week plus homework, and how you pick and choose which lessons they're going to be. So it is important to have something where it's like, oh, if this is how, if this is how history of Vietnam is being taught, it's good to have another perspective too. And I think it also just helps too. Like, there's this weird thing, like kind of weird idea, as someone who went to college, where it's like, okay, you went to college, now you're done. Like you don't, and it's like no, the idea is that education is supposed to continue even after college, and what you should be learning in school are the skills to be able to continue your education on your own. It wasn't that long ago where people were like looking down on those who, quote, did their own research. It's like, well, what do you mean? Like you have people walking around with, hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loan debt, and they're unable to do their own research. Like that's just messed up on a whole other level.
That was the whole, appeal to authority kind of thing that was going on during COVID, though. And how did those people get in those positions of authority? I mean, is it that they're the best and brightest, or is that they're the best connected? I tend to believe that, the value of college is going down as far as an education goes, but the value is still there for, especially at like elite universities, for who's in your class. You go to Yale, the CFO of Best Buy's kid is next to you or something like that. It's like a way I explain it to my students is it's like a club. So I'm in LA. So you could go to a bar and they have the same tequila and the same music playing and stuff like that. And you can just walk right in and get drinks and stuff like that. Or you can go to the most elite club and it has the same music, has the same drinks. But what you get is, well, Leo DiCaprio's at that club, or whoever, or Rihanna or whatever is at that club. And, big record producers are at that club. And it's just like all about who you know. So I think colleges are kind of like that. I wouldn't say that like a Cal State, the education is really that much worse than like a Stanford, but it's who goes there. And that is going to just make your network stronger. And then you'll get in these positions. But is that who we want in these positions? It's a weird thing, Lou. Like for your kids, you're going to stack the deck in their favor. Like I'll make sure my kid gets the best, whatever opportunities and into places that they maybe don't deserve, but I'm going to just like try and get them there because I love my kid and I want them to succeed. So we all act in that way, but we recognize also that if society acts in that way, it's bad. So there's a tension there.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure. Yeah. I'm trying to think of, when I was younger, I was growing up, I was playing ice hockey and I got to play, I played travel ice hockey. I played for my high school for a little bit. And then there were like these select teams that I played for, like kind of, I think it was like summer selects. Yeah. Like, so, representing Long Island, representing New York and Massachusetts, and play each other and all that. And I got on the team this one year, but I was an alternate. And stupidly, I was like, well, I'm not playing, so I'm not going to play. And I ended up kind of like taking myself, out of the game. And meanwhile, it's like, no, I mean, if you didn't play one game, you could still get in on some shifts and all that. I didn't have like the mentality of like, no, this is an opportunity here to play with the best kids in Long Island, even if I'm just an alternate. And granted, I was a kid at the time, but my parents, they weren't looking at me as an NHL prospect or a hockey prospect. So they were like, yeah, sure, whatever you want to do. Where I think, if my kids were in the same, position now, I would be able to bring my kid aside and say, listen, I know it sucks that you're not getting the amount of, play time that, ice time that you'd like, but this is the opportunity that you have to build, to grow, to skate with these guys, to know, even if you never get on the ice, they all know you. Oh, hey, it's Louis Perez,
Yeah.
So it could, come down the road. So I think even little things like that, like just having like a little bit of history, experience, and knowledge with that can go a long way.
Well, and I mean, I think that's what I also use social media for. It's a social network, and it can be used for that. Like you opened this up with, like, we've never met.
Right.
But like when I'm in New York or you're out in LA, like I'm sure we'll get together and hang out, and like, even our families could hang out and stuff like that. It happens like instantly. There's a lot of people who I've never met in person. And then I do meet them in person. I just dive like right into like, oh yeah, we've known each other forever. Like it's, right. And I think that the Gen Z, the other reason why I put my platform online, because it's not ideal. I would like the one-on-one interaction of like a classroom, but it's harder to scale, as I said, to get to more people. But for the younger generations, this is like more real than that in a lot of ways. And I'm starting to understand, because I do spend, now like a decent amount of time online, talking through screens and on my phone and stuff like that, on these platforms, just, educating and doing the stuff that I promote. And I don't know, there is something really, really real about that. And I think that people should understand like the importance of building these networks and letting people see who you are and forming these connections. Because not just for yourself to get something out of it, but just to learn about the world and to have that community. Community is so important. Friends are so important. There's studies about how, younger generations have fewer friends than ever. But I mean, there are people that I've never met in person that I would still consider a friend. I mean, I have like my closest friends that I like, are over on holidays and stuff like that. But I still think you can build a network of people that you haven't seen in person.
Yeah, I'm amazed by the connections that I've made just from putting stuff out. And like people who, like I have friends now who I grew up watching them on TV, and they've hit me up and said, "Hey, I really like what you're doing." And, we go back and forth and share goofy memes and stuff and talk on the phone and all that. And I think, something else too, I think is really important. Something that I've learned in that, like, while I've been, producing, content and entertainment and all that, there are people who are a lot better at marketing themselves, self-marketing. Mm-hmm. And so much of it is a willingness just to reach out and be like, "Hey, I'm around," because I get into this funk sometimes where if I haven't heard from somebody, I think that they might be mad at me. Yeah. Like they're mad at me for something. Like there was this one time I hadn't heard from a friend in a while. I was thinking he was a gay friend, and I thought maybe because like some of my more conservative views were coming out, which had nothing to do with gay stuff, whatever. Like when he proposed to his then fiance, I was so happy for him, and I reached out to him and said, "Oh God, I love this. I love that you guys are finally together and all that." But I felt like, I have like some of these other views, and maybe he's thinking because I have these other views, I don't like him anymore, or he doesn't like me or something like that. Like what a stupid thing. And then he reached out and was like, "Oh, I read this thing that you wrote was great, and hope you're doing well," and blah blah blah. And it was like all in my head. It was, oh, if they're not talking to me, it's because they don't like me anymore. And some people I do know that's a fact, but I think for the most part, it's needing to remind people that you're around and that you're available and all that, because it could be just the way life is. I mean, it's just so easy to lose touch with people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why the people get into politics. They're like always viewed as like sleazy or whatever, but they put themselves out there. Yeah, I mean, I struggle with that. I mean, although you're in entertainment, like that's part of it, is like the willingness to go out and ask to get up on stage, and in education, it feels extra weird, especially like pitching myself as like, "Hey, I can teach you this. I can do this. I can do that." It's definitely a block for me, especially now that I've started this business. It's really difficult to like reach out to people, and they're so willing to help. Like they believe in what I'm doing. They believe in my ideas. They've been following on Instagram or whatever, or they've been on my podcast or whatever, and they're like super happy to help and tell people about my platform and get me connected to the families that would be interested in stuff. But I still I don't like asking for favors. I don't like reaching out, even though like they don't see it as a favor. They see it as like wanting to promote what I'm doing because they see it as valuable. I have former students reach out to me all the time about this massive impact I've had on their lives, and like anything I can do to help you get more young people to have the impact you had on me. And I'm like, I don't really want to ask you to do it. They're like, "You're not asking me. I'm asking you how I can help." But I still have that block too. I do. It's like I don't know what that is. It's like imposter syndrome or something along those lines. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's a thing where there are a lot of people who the way that they can help you is by either, just, shouting your name from the rooftops and saying, you got to follow this guy. And there are other people who can help you by giving you money,
Yeah.
and that's that's a tough thing that I've had is asking people for money. Cause I always feel like I'm like I don't have a job if I'm asking someone for money, but meanwhile, like part of my job is like, trying to fund the stuff that that I'm making. But there are some people where it's like, again, like people have surprised me immensely. Like I had a fan of mine who really liked my stuff, and then he's like, "Oh, here's $1,000." I'm like, $1,000? Like
for what?
To
he likes your stuff.
Yeah, because he's like, "Oh, I love the stuff that you're making. Like, here's $1,000."
Yeah,
and I'm like,
wow.
what? Like, really? You just did that? Like, I didn't give you drugs. I thought, what do you?
Yeah,
and you're giving.
That's the thing, though. Like, I mean, like the amount of entertainment that people have gotten from you, and like the videos you produce and the shorts you produce and stuff like that is massive. So it's just we have a weird. There's like the way entertainment works is so strange because kids are so used to getting everything for free. And it doesn't work like that. But like it was always, you put in whatever X amount of dollars, you get something in return. You put in this and you get something in return. And they're just so used to free. But some people recognize, they see through that, they understand what's going on. But what that does when everything is free, at least in the beginning, is it just again goes to the people that have the most resources are the ones who are going to, blow up the biggest. And then we get back to what I was saying about the colleges. So the people who have, millions of dollars behind them because they're from a wealthy family or something like that are going to fund their comedy. It might be dog shit comedy, So you got to just like, you got to be able to recognize that some people see what you're doing and go, okay, I want to keep this kind of thing going. And I want to, support it. They see through that, like kind of modern day of like, give me everything for free.
Yeah. So you were talking about you attended the RNC. I was away with family in France, south of France. Thank you. We were away for like 10 days, so we missed we missed a lot of it. Some insanity from outside of the RNC, et cetera, like kind of trickled in because I still had my phone with me, and it was tough to put the phone down 100%, especially towards the end of the trip where I was kind of ready to come home. But so I'm not sure what happened at the RNC. I was at the RNC back in 2015, 2016
for Trump.
For Trump, yeah.
Wow.
And that was in Cleveland. My first time ever being in Cleveland, and at the time I was it was a very positive experience. Like there was no real drama or anything like that, which was a complete different scenario seen at the DNC in Philly later on, which is just madness because there were a lot of pro Bernie people who were really upset with Hillary. They hated Hillary. There was, I think at some point, people were knocking down fences and stuff, and it was in Philadelphia, and it was hot, and it was gross, and all that. But so the DNC I know is coming up in a couple of weeks. We're recording this a few weeks before it. But yeah, how was the RNC for you?
So you went to both RNC and DNC in 2016?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I tried to do that. So I got invited by a delegation out of Utah. And just like they took care of me and they really treated me well. And I was like, I've never voted for a Republican president. I'm not a Republican. They're like, cool, come on in, just enjoy it. Like I was like, oh, okay. And I tried to go to the DNC because one of the things I was talking about on my social media is like, it's a shame because I used to be a registered Democrat. Now I'm an independent. But the Democrats don't seem to be aligned with the stuff that I talk about. And it's like, not that crazy, man. It's classical liberal stuff. It's like viewpoint diversity. It's like, let's talk about things. No topics off limits. And at the RNC, it was like, everyone is really kind and polite. And like, I don't know, I'm like a Jesus dude. So like, I was cool with like people praying and stuff like that a lot. And like, they talked about education, educational choice. I mean, it was way more reasonable than I expected. I guess I said, you know, and I think that there's like a vacuum for reason right now in a lot of areas, and they seem to bring it in. I think especially and I think the working class too. I think the working class is now, I mean, the head of the Teamsters was there, you know, so the working class
I heard about that.
the Democrats, and now they're almost all over on the Republican side. And a lot of talk about the economy and how the economy is doing bad for the working class and the small business owners and stuff like that. So, you know, bring back a strong economy, which we had, you know, prior to COVID. So I think there's a track record benefit there for Trump. And Trump is Trumpy. It's like kind of funny because like people like made fun of him and stuff like that. He was kind of self-deprecating and things. He's Trumpy. It's the greatest thing. I've never seen something so beautiful. I've never seen it. It's the worst it's ever been. Nothing's ever been this worse. Like it's just
it's beautifully worse.
Hyperbole after hyperbole. You know, he's like a used car salesman.
Yeah. Well, so it seems like a lot of people have forgotten, but there was an attempted assassination on Donald Trump.
Yeah, it was like less than a week before that.
Yeah, and to go from there, you know, to the RNC, did that come up a lot? And I know that I remember seeing people with like, you know, the stuff on their ears, the earmuffs, but other than
there were a few. I mean, I saw maybe like in person, I saw like maybe like 3 people or something that did that. But that makes a good video. Yeah, I mean, it came up. People really like Trump, and like they like him, but more. Someone explained it to me like this. Because they were like saying about how, you know, they're definitely going to vote for Trump. They're wearing the MAGA hat and everything. I was like, but what about these things? What about like, you know, like the way he's called women names, and what about the you know, like the growing the economy and or the debt and stuff like that, or, you know, these various things. What about his like criminal allegations and convictions and stuff? And they're like, look, when I vote for someone, it's not a love letter. It's not a Valentine. It's a strategic chess move about what I think is better for the nation. And I'm convinced that he would be better than which was Joe Biden at the time, than the Democrats, you know, or that, which is really what it is. It's not Joe Biden. It's the Democrats, not Kamala Harris, right?
Right.
It's the Democrats, the party. So they just were like, it's a strategic move to what I think is going to be best for my family, my community, my business, you know, the people that I have to make payroll for, and my charitable givings, you know, whatever it is. Like they see it as actually a pragmatic thing. And yeah, he's Trump and he's Trumpy and he's going to be goofy, but he's business.
Yeah. The pragmatism, you know, argument. So for example, when, you know, Biden was on his way out, right? A lot of people were talking about how, well, you don't have to worry about Biden because really it's the people around him that are, you know, making that are making the decisions or whatever. It's that's who we're, you know, don't worry about Biden, you know, like because somehow Biden is incapable of running for president, but he's still capable of running the country. It's like, oh, don't worry about that because it's the people around him. Well, by that argument, then don't worry about Trump. It's the people around him. It's the, you know, the court appointments and et cetera. So somebody could very well make an argument. Yeah, I'm going to vote for the convicted felon because I'm really voting for the people around him, and he's the only, you know, the only other, you know, show in town. So, option.
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, I don't know. I kind of fell for it in 2020. Brett Weinstein did this like Unity 2020 thing to try and like just get another avenue, and then when RFK, you know, kind of showed up on the scene, RFK Jr., I was like, okay, this guy's, I mean, got a goofy voice and stuff, but he's calling like big corporate entities to task. I mean, that's really what it is. It's not like he's anti-vax. He's just anti the influence that big pharma has on our government and things like that. And when you hear him talk, it's like, it's very reasonable, but like you don't stand a chance, you know, it's a shame. When
that guy tried to kill Trump. I don't want to get into the they stuff because I haven't looked into it that much, but I was at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas.
Oh, okay.
And I was on my way to be on a panel where I think we were discussing free speech, protests, and violence. And Joanne Skousen, who runs the Freedom Fest in one capacity, was close to canceling, the talk because of what had just happened. And I think she said she probably would have canceled it had Trump actually died, or been killed. And it was, and I'm like reading this on my phone, like while I'm doing this walk through through this Las Vegas hotel to get through to the Caesar Forum and all that. And my response was, they tried to kill him. Was it fuck? I think my original one was like, "Fuck the assassins. I'm voting for Trump," or something like that. And I think that was the only time that I can remember where I've come out and said, like, I'm voting for a candidate or for president at least. And somebody recently called me out on it on Twitter because they were responding to a video that I made, and they said, like, basically Trump supporters are crazy. And I said, I shared a meme from Noam Blum about basically, if you're not a Trump supporter and you're criticizing the left doesn't know how to deal with you, so they'll just treat you like you are a Trump supporter.
Yeah.
And I put that out there because I'm still of that mind. And then the guy showed me, shared with me my post about I'm voting for Trump, and I'm like, oh, touche. No, I think you got me on that. But then it got me. Then it made me sort of like think, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, my response to that was very much an emotional reaction. It was like, I'll say that they tried to kill this guy. So to say fuck you to them, these would-be assassins, I'm going to vote for this guy. And part of me, it wasn't like, I mean, it could have been anybody, that they tried to assassinate, but I don't think enough people understand how close to absolute chaos we were, because had they succeeded in murdering Donald Trump, worst case scenario, you're talking about a massive civil war there. And best case scenario, a lot of fucking violence, because I think there would be a lot of, in particular, Democratic politicians that would have figurative and literal targets on their backs. I think it would just be mayhem, where politicians would be dropping like flies. And I don't want to. I think I was very scared of seeing us, go down that road, because
it's pretty wild, man. Like, you see, like, how, like, I mean, it was crazy how close that was, and just like nicked his ear. So it was enough to, like, it didn't miss him completely. If it missed him completely, it wouldn't be much of a story. I mean, it'd be a story, but not as much. But he was actually hit, but he was hit so minimally that he might not even have like much of a scar. Like, it's pretty crazy. My kind of take on this, do like the whole like Patterdox thing, like look for the patterns, is I think Matthew Crooks, the kid that shot him, I think he was just a nihilistic, lost, overly bullied, goofy, lost young man who just like had no place in the world and wanted to make wanted to make his impact on the world. A lot of these school shooters and stuff like that, these mass shooters, they don't have any kind of like feeling like they matter in the world, and it's easy to matter in a terrible way. I tell my students this. I was like, it's whatever. It's 11:30 by noon. You could be on the front page of like every major news story. All you gotta do is go out and do something horrific right now. You know what I mean? Like, so that, I think that concept goes for the shooter. I think as far as like how we got up there and everything, I think it's just mass incompetence from the Secret Service. Like, I love conspiracy theories, man. Mm-hmm. I love conspiracy theories. I'm down, but you also got to play like Occam's razor and Hanlon's razor. The idea of like, just sometimes it's stupidity, and I think that was just a lot of incompetence on the Secret Service. And I think it's a lost, really disturbed young man. And as far as like why people would support, some people said like, I wasn't supporting Trump, but I will now. And a lot of like the anti-Trump people are like, that's crazy. I don't believe that. I do believe that. I do believe that people would vote for him after that, because how you handle a situation when you're literally under fire, how you handle stressful situations speaks a lot. And the fact that he got up, like, he didn't know the extent or anything like that, adrenaline's running, whatever, but he had blood trickling down his face. He just got shot in the head, technically. The fact that he just got up and was like, fight. For the people that are feeling lost in this like economy and stuff like that, they want someone who's going to fight for them. He was shot like seconds ago, and now he's yelling fight. That turns people around. I think that are just like, oh, but he's Trump and he tweets mean things and he's kind of weird and blah, 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 blah. And he's a New Yorker and whatever it is. I think for the lot of working class people that are struggling right now, they want a fighter. Mm-hmm. And I think that he showed that.
I'd be interested to hear what Trump's thoughts are on, is it a lone gunman? Does he think does he a conspiracy? Well, no, and because he does have the power of having people who follows him, where he could easily turn around and say, Biden wanted me dead. Yeah. The Democrats wanted me dead. Even that could have been a very ugly situation too if handled in a different way. One of the things
narrative about him.
Yeah. Well,
one of that kind of stuff with January 6th and everything.
Yeah, and one of the things I've been seeing, there was an interview, I guess I think the guy from TMZ is done with I don't know if it's Secret Service agents or just law enforcement, talking about you have a guy with a gun on a roof, like what the hell is going on? And I heard some bogus explanation. Well, it's an open carry state, therefore you can't. The police couldn't just shoot the guy, and it's like, okay, making the leap that the police can't just shoot the guy, fine. But what you can do is say, hey, buddy, what are you doing on the roof? Or like, hey, buddy, is that your roof? Because at the very least, you get a trespasser. You're like, hey, dude, what the fuck are you doing up there? You can't be up there,
Yeah, well, it could be an open carry state, but not at a political rally, right?
Well, also not brandishing a weapon.
Yeah,
you can't be doing the free doing this walk on the roof.
I mean, yeah. What point when he's on the roof pointing a gun? It's like still like, well, that's his constitutional right until he pulls the trigger. It's kind of like those Ivy League college presidents that it's like, well, it's not anti-Semitism unless they actually follow through with the genocide. It's like what? Like that's like, so you have to actually get a couple of shots off first before then it becomes illegal. That's not. I don't think that's an excuse at all. That's crazy.
It's sort of like the aftermath of it. This the silliness and utter stupidity is just it's been incredible. Like with those those kinds of conversations or justifications for, oh yeah, we see this fucking weird guy on a roof and can't do anything about it. Go ahead, President. As opposed to, or even the interview with the TMZ guy was like, shouldn't the president have been told like, hey, don't bring the president up on stage, But yeah, I mean, there's so much there to unpack, and I think the idea of just negligence or just people not being good at their job is one of those. I mean, the very fact that a number of the Secret Service agents, not necessarily that they were women, but they were short women, that adds up. When Trump is like over 6 feet tall, and you have someone who's 5'7". It sort of defeats the purpose of being a human shield if the human you're shielding is out in the open.
Yeah. I mean, and it gets that's like all this culture war stuff that you've been commenting on, making sketches on and stuff like that for a long time. I've been commenting on kind of from my angle, like it has found its way into as mainstream as it could possibly get, like the attempted assassination of the president, the Olympic Games, like this stuff. Like, gender, could be race, it could be whatever it is. Like this stuff really matters. And like, it's not just a fringe thing on the internet or anything like that. Like that's why I think it's so important to talk about these topics, and in schools, a lot of teachers either are ideologically possessed. So maybe in like Idaho or Texas or something, they're ideologically possessed on the right. But most teachers, I think, across the country are going to be, because their temperament and because the colleges of education are going to be on ideologically, convicted on the political left. So it's either that, or if they're reasonable, they're just like, the reasonable thing is like, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I'm not talking about trans in my class. Are you out of your mind? I'm not bringing that. I'm not stepping in that dog pile. So I think that what happens is kids go out into the world and they're just ill-equipped to deal with those kinds of topics. They just don't know. And as like I dive headfirst into all of that to try and sort through it. That's where my curiosity comes in. So I've had 9 different transgender people on my podcast. You know what I mean? Like I have a lot of conversations with people who are all over the place, where we're all over the place politically and everything like that. And ideologically, because I think there's value in that. And then what I can do is once I've steel manned the positions and everything, then I can kind of help people to make sense of it. And I think that that's actually rare among teachers. So even if you're homeschooled, you're like, I want to get my kid out of this, crazy woke school. All right, well, what are you going to do? You're just going to throw, Fox News at them? Like, Is that really going to help them out? Or are you going to help them to be able to navigate this, properly? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, as a parent, something that my wife and I have been dealing with, with our guys they've been having like behavior issues over the past, probably the last month, I think has been particularly bad. Just like, tantrums that just don't stop, and just not listening, not understanding when they should, when at least the older one should understand what we're saying. So, trying to figure out a way to discipline them. And we don't hit, we don't spank. And there are times when I'm like, well, that would be a way to stop this guy. That would be a way to stop
too. It's like
it would be an easy way to stop this madman, because if this guy was if he was an adult rampaging in a fucking bar doing what he's doing, I could see, hitting him with a chair. But it's sort of like there's this idea of so struggling with like, okay, how do we discipline them? And I think another part of that is like the communication too. How do I communicate with my child to let them know that what they're doing is wrong? They could get hurt. They could hurt others, and that's wrong. And I think that's going to obviously play a role later on in life, where I want to be able to have this open communication with my kids, not only about how they're feeling, what's going on, but for them to tell me what they're learning, and to let because there are things that they might be learning that they think are just normal, and that everybody knows, that it's like, no, mom and dad actually have some some issues with that. So I want to be able to have that open communication with my kids.
Yeah, and I think it's not happening nearly enough. I think that just like, because then you get them to ask questions, and then you ask questions back, and then you kind of just sort it out. You are able to identify your feelings. But I think it is easier just to hit them. It almost is sometimes less emotional too, because you get like really emotional and frustrated when you're trying to talk them through it, and you're putting them in timeout and all this different stuff. Yeah. But it might just be easier to just be like, all right, well, you know what it is now. Let me just get out the belt or whatever it is, and chocolate maybe for you. I don't know.
Are you purple belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, I've been a pro belt for a long time, for like 6 years.
So as a purple belt, there are a lot of leg locks that you could be putting on your kids.
Are rubbery.
They have no clue. They have no clue.
Well, I don't know, man. My 9-year-old's been training since he was 3.5.
No, I've seen the stuff. Congrats, man. That's awesome.
My kids are little savages. Like they're good at jiu-jitsu, and if I don't throw muscle into it gets tricky. But
Will, thank you so much for joining me. I know it's a little on the earlier side where you are on the West Coast. If you're not following Will on Instagram, especially, please follow him. And I'm gonna have a link to Patterdox. I'm so excited for you, and I think it's something I'm gonna be looking into with my own kids when we get to the the education portion of life.
Yeah, man.
So
yeah,
thanks, bud.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always great talking to you.